Hello, Americans. There's I believe it's a Bulwark YouTube channel, and they're having a George Conway, and he's speaking about the law. And we know that most of us know that lawyers in all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts could have been and were, to an extent we discern since we were kids, collusion slash S with the crazy things from some ancient times since before modern religious messengers. And right through, there are proofs that before Columbus came to America, already a breaching method, not he didn't that no one wanted, already employed names A through Z, including Native Americans against Native Americans already. There are proofs that they already took down a mountain. It is more probable and practical to convict anyway, where all these apparent opinions and people with passions and emotions behind them, they are reliant upon quality aspects of fact-cheating nature. Uses of, for example, of I'm not even a lawyer, uses of words, uses of the phrase quid pro quo to screen other things and names involved with it. The intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a strangers I don't know at all. And there's one who approached me one time to make a fake exception, named Subby Bajaria, on the side of the Weathersfield High School one time, and asked me if I wanted to buy a Raiders coat for $20. I had no communications with him. I gave him $20 though, and I took the coat. And that was his recording. Increasingly, he's involved with interbranch and foreign intelligence the same way, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And I don't know where he lives, and I'm not sure exactly where he lived, but he's increasingly involved with people on my street who are involved with police switching and forging names, including different police forms. Increasingly, a whole bunch of people from Hartford Hospital have been forging names and fake conversations with me. And they are personally and professionally involved with a whole bunch of different courts, family members at crime scenes and with the prisons. When are we leaving out how many ways the prisons recorded themselves with all kinds of digital and criminal wire crime methods? They're putting fake things in databases and showing they have the collusions with that. Constantly, the interbranch in a whole bunch of different countries and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists at the same time. These are also named inter and intra cities and inter and intra campuses, and with names next to it involved with timed identity theft, fraud, slanders, with people with influences from off that. They'll tell you that, but you have to ask them correctly. That's why the hierarchy tied to it's criminally foreign, but they're not legitimately. There's a whole bunch of different police forms and courts forms, and then people want to say, "Well, I speak for Lux, I know it." You don't even know what pro is. I just looked it up, and just in other words, but demonstrably, what's recorded, I could show recorded. A whole bunch, like as a Judge Smith, involved with a whole bunch of offenders of kids and leaders of kids first force that are not just sexual. It's a whole bunch of different. It's medical. There's a Leahy family also involved with the principal upskirt nature, with more digital crimes, and they have pictures of his daughter on Facebook. These are people involved with the FBI and co-defendants of former FBI director Robert Luskin and their family members, planting evidences at each of the campus I went to. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake exceptions is important because nature communicates about exceptions in exception nature. Increasingly tactical ulterior from how the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions do when they're arguing, when they're debating with each other, when they're agreeing with each other. As in, everyone agrees to use words like peace as natures and styles that pretend they can't realize. Most of us know there's a difference between peace and hyper peace because nature shows us this. There could be criminal insidiousness natures of peace. There's hyper peace by its system, where it, to the extent we could discern its identity relationship. It comes with its identity relationship to itself, complete that extent and the value of that. Three ways equally increasing. Nature shows us. It shows us the same thing. We're showing its distinct identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. That identity of all space/existence that has even fish with two eyes, birds with two eyes. Quality aspects in nature distinct from humanity's species body of individual bodies with all group differences and generating that which is not us, it's not the other species bodies. And Earth is not without this system. The ground is hyper, everything is about this, how it is hyper additional nature. It shows us this. Black pupils. Black pupils and whites of eyes are about what we have. Black pupils, whites of eyes. And the fish have eyes, distinct but non-distinct, and simultaneous, but also further hyper simultaneous, distinctly not us nor them, but both of us anyway. To an extent, we could discern. You know, we didn't invent how all the other species look the way they are. We are being shown a hyper invisible. This is the same body we are being shown. If we want to appreciate what the identity of a verb is, it's more than one name. A predicate is a main verb. A participle nature is this same body grouped, whether it's being used as a present participle or as a past participle, and note it being about time. And note the infinitive, which is a phrase, which makes a verb. When you have the participle, the word to, when you put that before a verb, it becomes an infinitive. Now it can no longer be the main verb, but it's still the identity of a verb. But to discern the identity of anything, even if it's made up, it's the discernment of this distinct identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. So the infinitive, that's the root of the word infinity. Because English and the other language, ancient languages, even anyone that could be made up, it's about its identity, the extent we can discern its identity of relationship to itself, complete, that comes with that, and the value of that, three ways equally increasing with every smallest finite thing. And then the way distinctly from, but also non-distinct from grouped things and from progressive, but per its definition of progressive. See, in other words, the nature of debate contains quality aspects in nature itself that America's founders communicated to us to pay attention to how the breaching method used it and uses it. Our founders communicated for us to explain how they did not have free speech and they had to declassify about how there was a breaching method measuring everyone's speech, collusions against everyone else and themselves, or they were sensed through everyone else and themselves because it was only capable of being better than perfectly more and more. This is why and is how, even though we have cars, before cars even, the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born into that torture, extortion, slavery method. Where there are passions and emotions that people that jump up and say, oh, well, it's worse against black. Those people aren't trying to help black pupils. Because, in other words, we're going to move as a species body and help where it's concentrated needed the most while helping everywhere at the same time. And to do it anywhere, especially where it's concentrated the most, we have to help. In other words, nature shows us this. Nature shows that people stacked upon was designed. That was only allowed fathomable. It took possession of the nature debate with and as roles with value nature systems, tactical exterior from how nature communicates with value. And and in other words, with the value of our short words, let alone the protraction, and simultaneously, because the group too, because it has relativity. That's how it shows us things. Revelation means to evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere, but using its system, or it will show us it being the causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. In other words, we can observe how nature will show us any system that entertains those laws, even the ones now. Nature's going to demonstrate with negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. If there were one person that would be honestly, properly, with passions and emotions regarding the impositions of juxtaposed upon New York City, forgiveness is relative because there are juxtaposed, plural, by a singular human fact, human nature breaching method that came before modern countries, and it was too deeply entrenched for them to do anything about it. That's why and how America and Russia have means to all this what they call tech and science, in other words, and what they call defense and security. Meanwhile, the suburbs were tactically denatured, involved with the torture, extortion, fact, human nature, slavery of our founders. The only reason that appears to be debatable is because the breaching method inside the communications of our founders is being and have been changed. All kinds of ways people are constantly, there are proofs every year. Because the difference between the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, all a bunch of different countries shared on off campuses, they have to have lies tied to that. Because there's rules with guilt with that no one knows how to respond to properly. Because it's collusion /S. Hyper additionally, right where no one wanted collusions, but everyone only had that self-value. In other words, everyone had adapted to as styles. As systems tactical terror from that hypernative pure shows us, nature itself shows us the syntax and defenses of Native Americans' rights. Even if we are not made Native American, we should help them get their best defense of their rights. For example, because it's the human species body, the Constitution unabridged. It's science and the identity that built it that we can't discern the extent of. But we haven't. We could discern to an extent, and even to a slight extent with any subject, it comes with this complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. And then hyper additionally, where and how it uses the ground in its identity of relativity to and with the gases and their elements clear. When positive, no. One of the things that is something, and water. And its elements, many ways, more so than that's why the suburbs look like they do in America and Russia and Ukraine. Even though like that, even without the trucks and the cranes and the planes and ships, just with the communications with ourselves. If it's a plane, in other words, at all locations, areas, and states. If we get the right of our leaders, and our leaders are working with all on the same page, because every individual body, even if you become a leader, locations, areas, and states have stayed criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, collusion /S. Oh, but my motivation, because that's just how things are. It needs to hide behind that too, because this breaching method knew that nature itself would be demonstrating to us. A human fact, human nature breaching method is one of the things that is true always about those crazy laws against every single person, sustained against Native Americans, and specifically make them have to counter, but not know how to do so properly, but have to do so properly as best they could anyway, because now no one's following with nature's system, and it's demonstrating. You guys better do something fact, human nature wise. See, then they made them and names uses wise. Differences uses wise. With syntax. Therefore, with function. We're in a semi-ancient trap /S. maintained through ourselves, and per a method that maintains this, the outcome / S self-value. It maintains simultaneously other things, others or selves. Blamed right, we have answers and a method / S that we could follow. The A through Z countries, everybody in them would agree. Clearer than day, we could discern. There's part, how many things have been forced not to say about it because of locations, areas, and states they share. Like if you've ever seen a Judge Napolitano's YouTube channel, his live stream section of his YouTube channel, all those countries that are killing each other. And when everyone's trying to use their own names and other people's names, they don't know how to use our names. The only way to do it properly is the way nature shows us. We are a species body of individual bodies with all group differences to an extent being generated by itself. We could be systems other than its own, ignore its system, but it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts in natures, acts like predicate acts. The identities of the law, this preaching method showed them at countries A through Z, sickly distinctly from the ones as criminal enterprises, private ones. Speaking for and as that, as styles of logic, speaking for the law anyway. No one can help it because same way he's in, the sciences they appear not to share an identity. There are demonstrations of how they share an identity and how it is an identity that is about how and why we are hyper additional nature, making more of its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. Distinctly here at Earth, where it is a concentrated identity of relationship to itself. Increasingly, these three subjects, these two come with this any subject. Any subject comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that. The identity of all space / existence. That which is one of the hyper additional things, besides just being not us nor the other species bodies, the hyper invisible but still discernible scientific value. And no, as a subject that comes with its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that being how we could discern it, not being us that invented how we have two eyes and how the other species bodies have it. We have its identity relationship to itself being shown to us now. There are proofs that nature itself is showing us it is most probable and most practical to theorize, let alone to convict, that physical matter was generated relative to the appreciation properly of its identity to the extent we could discern its identity of relationship to itself, complete to an extent that we could discern that comes with that, and the value of that. It's showing us that they are grouped and they are increasingly volume. And then from inside itself, space, the identity of all space / existence, matter was generated, not with an explosion. And relative to Earth's way it's concentrated, it has an identity of relationship to itself, as all identities do, even ones made up, to positive and negative simultaneously. But also further as relativity to a quality of diffusion. So even good art wants to be further positive. See, but this breaching method employed, this conversation to be through where and how it already sustained since semi-ancient times, since before modern religious messengers were founded, modern religious messengers were born even. It had sustained roles with replacing making criminal insidiousness natures of positive roles that are collusions with the negatives and with the motivations and blame with that, blaming other things, others ourselves on things that it caused. Nature itself is showing us it's more probable to theorize, let alone to convict, with like especially with blame, that there is a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise that developed out of a transnational criminal enterprise, juxtaposed with branches of government, intelligence, foreign and domestic, and the difference of that. In some ancient times, they knew they were going to get caught because and how nature itself was going to show everybody, and that they knew that they figured out how they could get away with that by doing really, really bad things and forcing people to respond to them as fact human nature and therefore physically, not knowing how to do so properly, but then defending that anyway, and not realizing it would build them needing to do that increasingly simultaneously. They didn't realize they would be more and more incapable of accepting the practicality and the value of any individual short words, let alone their protraction, and let alone with convictions and with blame. This is not by accident. All kinds of ways. There are Connecticut prisons have rules like Sandy Hook has a prison, increasingly involved with people like named Kalo and Tomorrow and tied to them. I don't know their names. And there's a Lance Cuddy that my six people, a mayor's family has involved with people with the news that have been planting evidences on off campuses with digital offenders of kids, also with a former mayors and police chiefs with the same house involved with a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, also at the child campuses with medical crimes against kids and other natures of organized crimes at the same time. These are also people that separate subjects and separate and pretend not to realize their roles with all natures of crime scenes and mass communications racketeering worse than war crimes, relative to leaking out which is relative because at countries A through Z, because the cause of it is the breaching method that's at countries A through Z. That was raised, suits and ties, counters, exceptions, that blamed other things, others ourselves, for what nature has been demonstrating at all locations /S is criminal foreign influences / hypercriminal foreign influences. And the only reason it's criminal foreign influences is because everyone doesn't realize how it was entrenched and how it works. And while it's active now, everyone's increasingly self-valuing this having been. That's why we left out the phrases like criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influence. Richard Dombrowski has neighbors increasingly involved with a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes. He also called me to ask me if I wanted to buy a paintball gun for him. In other words, I never tried to contact him in my life. I went to one Cub Scout meeting at South Sevilla's house, a person across the street from their house, and his cousin. One's with the name Faenza. There are also a whole bunch of people at the corrections offices, at the state judicial branch offices, too. And next to them, I'm involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences with people there who have also been doing it at campus. I never saw them on a campus in my life. Enzo Faenza and his cousin there that live there. And they have there's a Brian Bonin who's also with a Steven Stocco with Weathersfield Pizza House, not far from the state judicial branch offices, who's also involved with Maria Vizino as a neighbor of a Maria Zealand growing up, and as neighbors of a Sal Sevilla, who's across the street from the ones also involved with body dumping spots, and their timed collusions with people with the intelligence community that have roles with home break-ins in my area through time, and child abusers, leaders of the kids, years apart, that were first forced, and they had roles of other natures of organized crime with that, and with as names at next to news locations. There's a Miss Riley increasingly recorded capacity demonstrate confirmed with judges and prosecutors and foreign and domestic medical families forging evidences, also with security of schools, also with sexual and medical offenders of kids, as timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. Increasingly, people next to where the Wethersfield Police Department is now in Wethersfield, they have roles at all sides of Central Connecticut State University. Increasingly, people with the name Tomorrow tied to the Wethersfield Avenue, tied to the town lines, involved with their proofs that they might be military. And they have people with the name Scalora involved with the World Trade Center attack, with the Saudi attackers. And per worse, that was involved, using and having used all sides' names remotely, criminally foreign influence. And lawyers, there's a Trantola and Trantola involved with WFSB. Also, hyper additionally with their advertisement placements, with prosecutors and judges that have been stacking fake things and databases together as collusion/S at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, mass identity theft, fraud, slander. They refuse to identify themselves legitimately. And they have people involved with violence threats credible on me. And they do it through other people too, and then non-verbally. I don't know the other names yet from other areas. They've been doing this since I was a kid. One's tied to the police confessions over the phone. Police that also attached me to fake conversations with them and police support roles with them when I was a kid and then as an adult. And the kids that they did go out and speak with them, they forced them to make up all kinds of things, fake conversations, ties to me. I didn't even respond to anything. And those are the same ones involved with overt criminal enterprises, plural, whole bunch of different countries, Korea, like with psychiatry. It's nothing against you guys, Koreans. Those psychiatrists have more scams against the ones at Harvard Hospital with all these different countries, Russians, Ukraine, they're doctors. They're involved with all forging names, tactically delusions raw. More scams than there are houses and streets in Hartford, Connecticut. In other words. What are they doing? What are they doing? With the military too, with the Wethersfield Police. Why don't you get them on paper, one name and sequence for this police chief Centron? Doesn't go away. He retires. Hey, get him on paper, one name and sequence. And with his officers, a whole bunch of fake things they've been stacking in the databases for years. I'm not going to separate the subject. They forced my other neighbor to collusions with them at the elderly home, and with people at 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, which is also the town line. Increasingly, judges tied to a Cololo family and a Smith family near me as the ones with the police bringing this up. And they brought it up shooting a pellet gun at me right before the president was shot. In other words, too, on the grass, I didn't respond from a distance. In other words, these are people who have been timing where I was going to go for since I was a kid, including people tied to them intercities. Whole bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University, like Jamie Carone. I never saw him there in my life. He's recorded one of the ones with Facebook people and the FBI. Since before it was there, they were involved with databases, involved predicate acts methods. They have the Britain Superior Court's Facebook page, and then a whole bunch of other Facebook pages, predicate acts, rape threats, with people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members They have been putting with their teachers too. Predicate acts, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Sequence shifts. Their collusions with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases, including ones they have personally with their personal people, and they brought me in fake because they have the influence of that by the intelligence community per themselves. Even if they made it up, that's a federal crime too. These are people refusing to identify themselves. Bob Chase has a Phil Collo involved with predicate acts on my street with him. He non-verbally confirmed after it. Phil Collo, he was driving by on a bike right after someone else was repeating one of the names of one of the kids involved with the principal sex offender, also involved with a Bob Chase, who also confessed the name Christine, and other medical people, also with delusions wrought with them, and wire crime acts and mail crime acts with them. And with the news, putting fake conversations with me with the Wethersfield police when I was a kid, with people increasingly involved with families at schools. There's reportedly, I might be Elizabeth Walters will tell you I never had a conversation with her in my life. The Wethersfield police and more people involved with child abusers, leaders of the kids years apart, have him involved with security with the schools further, and they're his neighbors involved with medical offenders of kids, and with the intelligence community, with the Wethersfield police and the town officers, also with other police forms juxtaposed. So these are people that speak for the law, like Mr. Conway. After being, through campuses A through C, abridged, incapable, we have black people's whites of eyes. We have the identity of, we have one identity that is showing us what is different and the same at the same time. That same identity that's showing us the other species' bodies have these quality, have quality aspects in nature. Distinct, non-distinct, simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous. Not just birds, it's showing us the value of the slash being how there's three ways. To appreciate this with every subject comes its complete identity relation to itself and the value of that. Hypernative pure again. Nature itself shows us. Nature, the syntax of and uses of words like values like the Constitution, like knowledge. If I hadn't read quid pro quo, it's already recorded at all location /s that they're involved with all the natures of organized crimes and interbranch switching names in 4 games at the same exact time, including with the World Trade Center attack in the court next to it, as one's increasingly involved with the WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, WTNH, Connecticut's Channel 8 News, and Channel 61, Fox Connecticut News. Increasingly names next to them, too. There are proofs that there are FBI involved with a Fred Gruzet, who's one of the ones involved who came, I didn't know who he was, came to my area from another area as a stranger. Then to make it look, I never even saw him around my neighbors, like a Tim O'Brien and a Ray Claw. And they have rules with the family members of retired probate court judges named Delafera and Spada. And they have rules with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and planting evidences with their neighbors, involved with the finances and people on all the state judicial branch offices, with this Phil Collo, with more medical sexual offenders of kids, and confessions tied to increasingly a Mazzucato bakery in Hartford and where it is now on Elm Street in Rocky Hill. They have rules with a Mayano family and people with this that are roles with the schools with identity theft, frauds, putting predicate acts in databases. Sometimes it is the people that influence them to behavior, to do things and act motivation. Sometimes it is their own families. This is also where and how family is involved, where they brought in criminal enterprises and their narratives and natures, where they're still talking and they jump and they, I shouldn't have to beg to get them on paper, one name and sequence, with the Wethersfield police forging and switching names and they should not pretend it's personal. They did good making confessions too. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. And these are other police departments with the same house/S involved with predicate acts with them, and with the ones at Central Connecticut State University, and increasingly at my grammar school that I never had in my class that are putting fake things in databases against me. And increasingly it's being and haven't been brought up by the ones that I can't get a response to. They did all little tricks too. Because these are on a mass scale, this breaching method showed people, including of the courts and the police forms and the interbranch family members, they have to collude and self-value collusions being and having been at all locations/S to bring things before courts or civil or criminal to high collusion/S with all kinds of predicate with acts with facts methods in natures. Think about that, how long they got away with preventing what little kids could discern relative to the founding locations were built before cars in the suburbs. We could discern clearer than day a concentrated breaching method. I'm not even a lawyer. We could discern a predicate acts with facts methods, plural, and styles and natures leveraged as the value of their employments upon themselves. And especially upon the people, regardless if they have the jobs or not, with their people stacked upon in New York City, even if they're in the suburbs. We have to examine the value of these jobs. See the nature of debate. People are out there jumping with passions and emotions. Same ones who will jump in with passion and emotions, delusions, raw, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature. If someone brings up black people as white survive. It's not for black or white. It's not for Native Americans or citizens or colonists. It's for the human species body of individual bodies and group differences being generated by it. That hyper-native pure, we're forced to ignore that. Quality, fact, human nature capable of being with our short words, or we are sensed. And they change and fake what we say. They adapt to that syntactically. Black pupils, even if we are a majority of people, even if we are everybody. Any grouping of humanity that comes from entertaining what's, music in the background. You guys heard American history wrong. We're going to go back to the first principle thing, James Madison's plan, forcing the other founders, and then the presidents. George Washington agreed to use that plan and use the help of James Madison and of the founders behind him. That's what made the Declaration of Independence. That's what made the Constitution. You guys want to use the knowledge of American history out of sequence, sensing for the breaching method. Get down or gather round. Vaccines, in other words. I teach those things, but long. So George Conway, they do things like that, and they go hearsay too. They have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, really hearsay. Oh, hearsay. Then they know more than the person say. This is relative to how they stayed natives with the stream of people going into superior courts each day. The sick natures of torture, extortion, slavery roles. For example, concentrated that probate court judges have, including with their personal and professional criminal foreign influences with the same houses involved with wire crimes, with the Wethersfield police through time, and with foreign and domestic military, the rules with Afghan leaders and kids, way before Biden was the president. And the branches of government individually grouped together, we can observe them being and having been at locations, at areas and states, at countries A through Z, being and having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. Even with the nature of debate. That's why we should bring up the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions, how we could observe them being and having been used remotely. Like, for example, with the nature of debate regarding that, they'll leave out the suburbs, how our founders communicated for us to appreciate how that design had been employed by the torture, extortion, slavery method against every single individual difference. and against themselves and everyone to pretend other, otherwise they were sentenced through their own for the breaching method. They had laws. For example, I learned in notes at Central Connecticut State University. They had laws that if anyone was found out, even you heard someone speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations and you didn't tell on them, they would do bad things to you, that person, and everyone around them. Clearer than day, we could discern self-valued roles with use/uses of words like diplomacy, only having been known, used as criminal insidiousness natures of a positive thing. But black pupils who denies that the ground below our feet has criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, has criminally foreign influence, tactically nature. They're going to have inherent to, active to, and progressive to their logic and nature needs to self-value, being having been replaced. The subject of the breaching method is a scientific value inside the communications of America's founders and James Madison and his plan with them behind it. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan again. You guys want to have debates and say, "Oh, it's easy to go. Oh, this person's narcissistic." How many things that the reasons? How many things? In other words, the locations every state you guys want to speak about free speech is punks, not real free speech. You have obligations not to change and fake people's words, not to self-value roles with others doing. Oh, I don't know. When did the FBI or any other agency have integrity? When did the courts have integrity? Leaving out black people's whites of eyes. It shows they did not. Nature shows. Nature teaches us about the law. Natural law is real. All sides are sick. Tactically, delusions wrong. That's why we need to have mandated law followed. Get me off the fake communications with the New Britain Superior Court and on Facebook. They're changing and faking what's actually digitally recorded with the Wethersfield Police switching names. Whole bunch of names with Whiting Forensics and State Police, Interstate. In other words, the same ones, the same names. And their educators, time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and news. WFSB, please get me off the fake conversations with you and with others. And your roles with prosecutors and judges, readings of statutes and precedents regarding what's written online, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. You left out your roles with predicate acts and the wire crimes at the same time. That changes those readings of statutes. Don't get it messed up. Get the Wethersfield Police too on paper with the Schumack family. And they're gonna, in other words, what are they doing with the law? Get them out of the law. Have them say forgiveness is because they painted themselves in corners. They have a whole bunch of people with Sandy Hook campuses. They have Alex Jones and people tied to him, and their Sandy Hook victims screening roles with victims advocates too, and the courts, judges, and prosecutors. A whole bunch of people at the corrections offices and judicial branch offices in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and next to it, and the difference of that roles with predicate acts relative style to needed by their styles. They've been planting evidences with those names, increasingly with names on 2-Route Highway and conjunctions to it, and where it runs into Hangdog Lane. And they run into, they're conjunctive to Route 3 that goes by the judicial branch offices and the Burlington Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. Increasingly, there are people from Wethersfield, Connecticut, intelligence intercities with people all along the Burlington Turnpike involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. In other words, and interbranch stacking fake things in databases since founding collusions. That's evidence. That's hyper evidential. In other words, you have these serious subjects, and you have these talking heads. To use the words of a Thomas Potter. I believe his name was Thomas Potter. In English class, I was going to take the female teacher who was also with her neighbors, involved with people with communications with him, and to her involved as identity theft, fraud, slanders, but also as federal evidences crimes and predicate acts roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and foreign and domestic intelligence. Increasingly, people from New Britain, Connecticut, Central Connecticut State University, all sides of it, have roles with names planting evidences on my street in Wethersfield, Connecticut since I was a kid, and then putting fake things in databases. That's what it's relative to the shootings. There are whole predicate acts methods leveraged upon the databases, and then further at the campus's locations, and relative to exceptions. That's also why the head narrative unit was made up by the family that acted or was a family with a homeschool girl involved with an Asian kid, involved with federal evidences crimes and delusions with Hartford Hospital, also with people from Yukon, a whole bunch of people from Yukon involved with criminal enterprises and foreign and domestic intelligence all along roads and routes like Franklin Avenue and next to Hartford Hospital, with the businesses like Ilo's Kitchen and Tomorrow's Market, sought me out as strangers, all exceptions too, to use them criminally foreign impulse, tactically delusions wrought, intercities, with names on and off campuses involved playing predicate acts with them, making all sides of criminal and civil cases and crime scenes, collusions with the courts, forging and switching names. Whole bunch of courts names and the FBI involved with them too, with the fire departments, increasingly involved with identity theft fraud. So they run into Hartford Hospital. See Mark Violet and Mike Violet, their roles with the intelligence family next to Hartford Hospital and at Hartford Hospital, and with the Eric Jensen and with the Tomorrows and the Mianos too. These are people increasingly with doctors involved with prosecutors and judges, with medicines crimes and with delusions, and with their kids involved with various natures of organized crimes at the same time, relative to the readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence, and tactically delusions wrought since before our founders were born, and with their roles self-value, replacing the scientific value of the human factual nature breaching method that was communicated inside the communications of our founders. And they have roles screening that by uses of their words, leaving out what they declassified about that. Be a God. Get them on paper, one NBC was. Get me off the fake conversations with this Leahy family, too. Judge Napolitano, let's go. Fox Community News, right before you left them, they have your Facebook involved with them, with their Facebook and the Facebook page of the Britain Superior Court, involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. Whole bunch of people tied to him and his co-defendants and their family members and neighbors, involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime with kids and crime scenes relative, and the prisons. You guys should fear God too. There are people with the name Cintron from Puerto Rico, tied to a retired police chief Cintron, and there's a guy who reportedly a patient or not, a forced patient and criminal or undercover or what, because he made all these confessions at Sandy Hook, and is involved with Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron, and people with the name of O'Brien and a Phil Collo, people involved with Puerto Rico tied to Mike Pandolf too, involved also with Venezuela and people with the borders, New Mexico and Canada, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, also with people from Afghanistan, leaders in Pakistan, their own against their own, our own against our own, and the difference is used, and the exceptions are used for the breaching method roles. That's why we have suits and ties, kind of tactically delusions, wrought readings of religious books, tactically unscientific. So, in other words, they have collusions with those people and their differences. They have the people that attack the religions and passionately defending them, and the exceptions, collusions with the FBI, also with the principals, as collusions with overt criminal enterprises, with the criminal and child abusers, leaders of kids, the elderly. In other words, all kind of roles with it too, with the only natures of, matter of this person's nice and they're evil associated with them. Oh, but that's not because that's our job, and this goes to the doctors. Those doctors have roles with the nurses with sick things at elderly homes, as the ones that were at the same time involved with the child abusers, leaders of kids force, as ones at the same time there are proofs and next to the veterans' homes. See how the veteran homes look like those buildings in New York City. And I want the people in New York City to know clearer than day. All kinds of kids from all throughout the America. We knew since we were kids that before cars, the suburbs are tactically denatured, let alone the city. So when we have to pay attention to how everyone jumps in and changes what people say. When we pay attention to the predicate acts with facts methods and whole acts that we could whole methods of them upon the people of New York City that we could discern, and you're going to come to a different appreciation of them pretending that they're appreciating words like democrat, democracy, republic. Republic is functional by the campuses, but they haven't been appreciated tactical terror from what could afford to defend that and to be, let alone to protract short words proper by the defenses of the republic for which we stand in its campus system. Black people. It is here where there's asphalt and concrete, and where there are PFAS and chemicals and nasty things in waters, with fish not there at all or just put there, and not with the way they used to be. There used to be worms that would walk into the bodies of water in the rain, because now there are no longer bugs on the surface. They used to walk into the bodies of the puddles. They walk up in the rain when there are less bugs available for the birds to eat. Nature communicates with all about positive and negative, and its identity of relativity to its identity of relativity to itself, and only increasing value of that. But we have nature's communications replaced. And why there are reasons we know how to blame correctly. We left out how, if we examine, everyone's forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to leave out how the breaching method had roles with this. We have to pay attention to how the human fact nature breaching method was inside the was a subject inside the communications of our founders. And it is being replaced. And where there are roles replacing it, there are roles, needs, natures, and styles pretending not to realize and self-valuing that having been. As collusions with prisons, with body dumping spots, with campuses, including ones with child abusers, leaders of kids, forced, with other natures of organized crimes like medicines crimes and drug crimes, and pretending that they're legitimately undercover roles with that and its elements. So Richard Dabrowski, I don't know him. He was influenced, like they were planting fake quid pro quo, but his neighbors have roles with predicate acts with body dumping spots, and people increasingly brought up to me tied to a South Seville and Richard Dabrowski and their parents and their roles with their neighbors, with organized crimes and wire crime acts and methods with police and courts and refusing to identify themselves. Also with this sub-Iberio. Increasingly, I don't know what grammar school or middle, I never saw a sub-Iberio until I was in high school. I never had a class with a sub-Iberio. I never saw him on the inside of the school. He's one of the ones involved with New Britain Superior Court with a whole bunch of people with judges, prosecutors, people with Connecticut's District Court and Harper Courts that have been planting predicate acts with names next to all sides of Central Connecticut State University through time. And increasingly with people that put fake things in databases at each of the campuses that everyone went to. It's recorded clearer than day. You have them with the ones that had been acting tied to those fake things in databases, jumping in on social media, and then having to hide what is actually recorded. New Britain Superior Court has a whole bunch of roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with predicate acts before and after the World Trade Center attack, with Facebook people in their campuses before they were a company and through it, and with the Facebook page in the Britain Superior Court. and then slash S how they made more. And as passion crimes to pretend they didn't realize what came first. See, inter and intra cities, they have roles with uses of confessions relative to they don't even know the extent of it because this breaching method has been using the identities of differences, like the names of the people of the sciences remotely, individually grouped and together. It is manifest this way at the campuses too. Increasingly, the intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed as people on Church Street and Old Weathersfield sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have roles with the FBI and some courts that have been planting evidences with retired police chiefs and a DeMauro family is involved with home break-ins in my area, involved with them. Also with a whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital that forge names of fake ties to people. I don't even, and with doctors, medical, a whole bunch of foreign and domestic medical people at Harvard Hospital have roles with predicate acts with names along Church Street and names, along, in other words, with associated with the corrections officers, with the Weathersfield police confessions too, and how they use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. They're refusing to identify themselves. So please, Judge Napolitano, I want to deal nonviolently with the people involved with weapons, bug sprays, and games where they're making confessions like this Bob Chase with this Phil Collo, and then he shows up on my street on a bike. I never saw him outside of a car. I only think I saw him on a car once or two. Wasn't sure if I ever saw him on a car before, but I saw him on a bike. And so there's violence coming, and there's violence that has been. There are roles with poisons too, and with people with smoke involved, and with sexual abuses of their kids that are also fact-cheating in nature. Increasingly, there are people with the name Riley involved with criminal enterprises and Jewish-themed people involved with the ones involved with wire crimes with the police that said Jew in front of me a lot, but I never responded to them. I knew a Paul Zano. The only time Paul Zano ever saw me out was and I didn't even communicate with him there the whole way there in Norwood. This kid has been planted as one of the people that were may look like we had communications. By timing with me, take a picture of him with proofs with a Trinity College. He has a Puzo family. He says is involved with them. People all along Route 3 are involved with people with the name Zano. Involved further with state police in foreign countries and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and his educators. Involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders. We have to get them on paper with the Weathersfield police forging and switching names. These same ones and their sources are with a whole bunch of other Connecticut police departments involved personally and professionally with the same house. /S. Please, Judge Napolitano, do what's right. Please, George Conway. Let me show you how I speak for law. I'm not even a lawyer. You don't leave out black people's rights of eyes. You don't leave out what we can discern here. You don't leave out the people. The people. You don't leave out tactically denatured ground, native pure, hypernative pure.